Hello everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're going to dive into an emotional journey of love, courage, and survival. The story of Dieu, Huyen, and little Maya. From battling through terrifying storms that threatened to sweep away their fragile home, to standing side by side, holding onto ropes in the raging wind. They remind us of the strength that love gives us even in the darkest moments. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Hello everyone. Life is strange. It always knows how to sow love in the most challenging moments. Amidst the storm, when torrential rain seems to tear everything apart, a question echoes in the heart. Is love strong enough to stand firm? That night, the storm raged fiercely. Rain pounded the flimsy roof like hammer blows, and the wind howled, seeping through the cracks, making the entire house tremble. Inside, Dieu held Maya tightly in his arms, his heart clenching with every thunderclap. He remembered his promise clearly, a sturdy home, a safe haven for the mother and child. And above all, he had vowed that once the house was complete, he would kneel and offer Huyen the proposal he had kept in his heart for so long. But now, as the small house shuddered, as if it might collapse under the storm's fury, that promise became a heavy burden in his chest. Could he protect the two most precious people in his life? Or would everything be swept away in a fleeting moment? Huyen sat in a corner of the house, her arms wrapped tightly around her daughter, whispering prayers mingled with stifled sobs. With every gust that battered the palm leaf walls, she shuddered, her eyes wide with fear. In those eyes, I saw a sky shrouded in darkness and the despair closing in. The storm roared like a colossal beast. The wind was no longer just a sound. It was like the screech of 1,000 swords slicing through the air. The bamboo panels and wooden beams trembled as if they might shatter. I heard a sharp crack from somewhere on the roof, dry and brittle like breaking bones, making my heart leap. Maya burst into tears, her cries so faint they were nearly swallowed by the storm's roar. But to Huyen and Dieu, they rang out like a piercing bell. The little girl had no idea that one more fierce gust could send the entire house crashing down. Huyen held her tighter, murmuring, "Don't be afraid. Mommy's here. I'll protect you." Dieu refused to let himself weaken. He stood braced against the door, which rattled violently, his hands bloodied from gripping the wooden bolt, veins bulging red. He knew if the door gave way, everything inside would be swept away. In that moment, he was like a living shield, standing against the full wrath of nature. And I, watching it all, felt my heart being torn apart. Part of me wanted to scream, "Run! Get out of here before it's too late." But another part held me back, pleading, "This is our home, our flesh and blood, our dream. If we leave, what do we have left?" My mind was a battlefield, as chaotic and terrified as the storm outside, yet fiercely defiant. With every flash of lightning, the small house was briefly exposed amidst the frenzied heavens. I saw clearly the raindrops streaming down Huyen's face, her eyes filled with worry, but still burning with love. I saw Dieu, his entire body straining against the wind, his gaze resolute as if challenging the storm itself. And I saw Maya, small and fragile, the invisible thread binding us all to hold on. The rain pounded harder, like 1,000 giant hands slamming against the roof. The bamboo walls swayed, the ropes creaking as if about to snap. I didn't know how much longer we could hold out. Day! Huyen shouted through the wind. If the house collapses, take her out first. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were resolute, heartbreakingly so. Day shook his head, shouting back, No, no one gets left behind. I swear I'll hold this house together. I swear I'll protect you both to the end. It wasn't just a promise. It was the roar of a heart, drowning out even the storm's howl. But then, a deafening crash rang out as a section of the thatched roof was torn away by the wind. Rain poured in, icy cold, like 1,000 needles piercing our skin. Maya screamed, and Huyen, trembling, shielded her daughter's head, tears mixing with the rain. In that moment, I thought everything had fallen apart. The tiny house was like a battered boat struggling in a furious ocean. One stronger gust, and it would be swallowed whole. And I realized, perhaps love cannot stop a storm. But it was love that kept us together, refusing to flee, refusing to let go, even as death loomed before us. The storm continued to rage, but amid the wind's howl, I heard Dee's pounding heartbeat, Huyen's trembling whispers, and Maya's sobbing cries. Those three heartbeats wove together into a fragile but enduring melody, like a tiny flame still burning red in the heart of the storm. Morning finally broke, but the sky did not brighten. Instead, the horizon remained covered in layers of dark, swollen clouds that pressed heavily against the land. Rain continued to fall, merciless and endless, each drop sharp as needles. The storm had not passed. It only seemed to change shape, to grow more cunning, more violent. For Dee and Huyen, it was not yet time to rest. Inside their half-finished home, Maya was curled up with the dog, her small hands gripping the fur like it was the last piece of safety in this world. Huyen gently brushed her daughter's damp hair back, whispering soft promises that things would be all right, though her own heart trembled. Day was already preparing to leave. He looked at the cracked walls, at the roof that swayed with every gust of wind, and he knew the truth. Without stronger reinforcements, this fragile shelter would collapse before nightfall. We need ropes, bamboo, anything to tie this house down, Day said, his voice low but firm. His eyes met Huyen's, filled with worry, yet determined. She hesitated for only a moment, then nodded. I'll go with you. The storm outside was no less than a battlefield. The moment they stepped out, the wind slammed into them like a wall. Rain whipped against their skin so hard it felt like burning. The road to the market had turned into a river of brown, swirling water. Each step was a struggle, their bodies bent against the storm, clinging to each other so they wouldn't be torn apart by the force of nature. Huyen's sandals were nearly sucked away in the thick mud. Several times she stumbled, and each time Dee caught her, his hand gripping hers with a force that said, I will not let you fall. The world around them seemed to blur into water and wind, yet they pressed on, driven not just by the need to save a house, but by the promise of safety, of love, of keeping their daughter alive. At last, they reached a small shop that hadn't yet closed. The owner, drenched to the bone, handed them coils of rope, bamboo poles, and a few nails. This storm is no ordinary one, the man muttered. Hurry, get home while you still can. Dee bowed his head in gratitude, then wrapped the supplies tightly against his back. The journey home was even more treacherous. The river rode deeper, the wind stronger, but the thought of Maya waiting kept them moving. By the time they reached their yard, the rain had turned into sheets of water falling from the heavens, blurring vision, suffocating the air. The house groaned under the weight of the storm, like an old man about to collapse. There was no time to waste. Dee threw the bamboo poles down, uncoiled the ropes, and shouted over the roar of the wind, "Tie the corners! Hold the posts steady!" Huyen ran to the side of the house, her clothes plastered to her body, her hair whipping wildly across her face. Her hands, already raw from the previous night, gripped the rope with all their strength. Together, she and Dee wrapped the ropes around the beams, anchored them to nearby trees, and drove bamboo stakes into the soaked earth. Each knot tied felt like binding their lives to the house. Each pull of the rope cut into their palms, leaving lines of pain, but they did not stop. Their breaths came short, ragged, yet their hearts beat in unison, pushing them forward. The storm howled louder, as if mocking their efforts, as if daring them to give up. But surrender was not in their blood. Then came the worst of it. A sudden gust, fiercer than all before, slammed into the house with the force of a giant's hand. The walls shuddered, the roof lifted slightly before snapping back down. The ropes creaked, stretched to their limits. Dee dug his heels into the mud, gripping the rope like a lifeline. Huyen clung beside him, her eyes squeezed shut against the sting of the rain. "Hold on, don't let go," Day shouted, his voice barely audible above the chaos. Huyen's response was a cry, but not of fear. It was defiance. "This house must not fall. I believe in you, Day." Their words cut through the storm, a declaration louder than the thunder itself. In that moment, it was not just a fight against wind and rain, but against despair, against the whisper in their minds that told them it was hopeless. Minutes stretched into eternities. Their bodies trembled, their muscles screamed, but they kept pulling, tying, reinforcing, refusing to let the storm win. Maya's small face flashed in their minds, her laughter, her innocence. For her, they would stand against the heavens themselves. Finally, the gust passed. The house, though battered, still stood. The ropes held, the bamboo stakes dug deep into the ground like loyal soldiers. Dee collapsed to his knees in the mud, chest heaving, but his eyes burned with relief. Huyen dropped beside him, her hand searching for his, squeezing tightly. They looked at each other, drenched, exhausted, but alive, and for a fleeting moment, as lightning flashed and thunder roared, their hearts were calm. The storm outside could rage all it wanted, but inside them, there was a fortress stronger than any bamboo or rope. That was what kept the house standing. That was what gave them the courage to fight through the madness. And that was what would carry them through the rest of the storm still to come. In the heart of a violent storm, Dee, Huyen, and little Maya fight to protect the only place they can call home. Rain lashes down like knives. The roof trembles under the roar of the wind, and every thunderclap feels like the world is breaking apart. Yet, in the midst of fear, love becomes their anchor. Dee holds his promise close, to finish the house, to build safety, and to propose to Huyen once it stands strong. When morning comes, the storm hasn't ended. They risk their lives in the raging wind to buy ropes and bamboo, returning to battle nature itself, knot by knot, Heartbeat
nhưng cũng bị
by
cuốn hút
heartbeat,
bởi sự điềm tĩnh của đệ.
side by
Khi
side,
Adam xuất hiện,
they
một
defy
căng
the
thẳng nặng nề
storm's
bao trùm
fury.
không gian, gợi lên
But
mối
as the
quan hệ
sky
ẩn giấu
darkens once more,
và quá khứ
a
chung.
question
Cùng
lingers.
nhau, họ đứng trước ngưỡng
Will their
một câu chuyện
fragile house
đầy những câu hỏi
and
chưa
their
được giải đáp.
dream
Hy vọng
survive the
và lời
next
hứa
wave?
về sự khám phá.